Hello. Welcome to the Fast Five, the online series that answers your health questions fast. Today I have with me Danielle Ireland. Hi, Danielle.
Hi, Erica.
And we're going to be talking about relationships and health. Oh, yeah. No, but seriously, it's a really boring conversation. So, before we dive in, though, if you are not subscribed to this channel, why don't you go ahead and click that button and also hit the like button while you're at it so you can be notified when new episodes like this drop. And with that, we're going to get into talking to Danielle about relationships and health. And while I'm going to let Danielle introduce herself, highlights here is she is a relationship expert. She's a therapist and she's going to be a mama soon and helped me walk through some of my own fears. So thank you for making me feel human. With that, Danielle, before we dive into the Fast Five, can you tell people a little bit about you and your work?
Yeah, I'm happy to. So, I work as a therapist by day and by night. I also have a podcast called Don't Cut Your Own Bangs. The tagline, it's the remedy to comparison and feeling like everyone has life figured out but you. And I interview creatives and experts in various fields and people that just generally interest me. And I want to know more about how they do what they do, where they struggled doing what they did, and what they learned from it. And I've just started incorporating some solo casts, which is really fun, which is weird, just me talking into a mic, but I love it. And then I also have created a journal, which is like a self guided tool to help people develop their relationship with themselves. And through the process of making that, I realized, oh, I have more to say. So I created an online course called the Unleashing You Relationship course, which is to help improve the most important relationship in your life, the one between you and you.
I love all of it, but that latter I think is so important. And before we hit record, what we were talking about was how you have to have a really clear relationship with yourself to have a very clear, bountiful, healthy relationships with others. So this is, I think, the perfect segue to question one, because people might be thinking to themselves, how the hell does relationships relate to health?
Mhm.
But we know that they do. So question one for you is, how do relationships relate to health?
This is a great question. And I could talk about it in terms of biology, physiology, the brain, but also just I'm an emotional person by nature, so I like to speak from a place of emotion. We are hardwired to connect. We are mammals. Mammals are pack creatures as much as our culture promotes totes and loves to, focus on independence. We are actually, I wish I could just take that word and wipe it from the zeitgeist and really focus on interdependence. That it's really about how we relate to ourselves and by extension how we relate to others, because we need other human beings literally to survive. And because we're no longer living in the sort of like very primal basic, cave like tribe scenarios, we don't actually need other people to barter and trade and keep us safe from saber-toothed tigers. But what we need actually is connection and validation and empathy and compassion, because that's what helps release all of the good feeling hormones that we want, like the serotonin and the dopamine, and reduces cortisol. So it's better for our brain, it's better for our overall bodies, and it freaking feels good when you can connect with another human being and laugh about a shared experience, or laugh at yourself, or to cry and know that you're not alone in your experience. There's just all the therapy in the world that I could do with a client, none of that ever compares to what it really means to hold and embrace a friend, or be held and embraced by someone, or to have someone make eye contact with you and just really see you. I think that's kind of where the secret sauce is.
What you said is so important, particularly around all the therapy in the world can't quite equate to a friend hugging you or you hugging a friend. And that piece of it, I think, is lost on a lot of people. Like you said, it's independent. We do this by ourselves, but we're wired for tribe. We actually need others. And in this road to improve yourself, you can feel so alone and you never are. And so making sure that you're connecting with other people matters because you can't get to where you want to go by yourself.
No. Well, it's like relationships, and I hope that this isn't too too overextending for me not being in your space at all, Erica, but like you're never done with food. Like food is a daily part of your life. Like the choices that you make and the decision to eat and nourish yourself, like that hunger never goes away. You have to keep honoring that. And the same is true with relationships. I think so often, particularly in couple sessions, I'll work with people and they'll sit down and they want to be very logical and very solutions focused, or like, just tell me the thing I need to say to my wife, or just tell me the thing I need to say to my husband so that he knows to pick up his socks, or whatever. And we want it to be something we can check off a list. But the image that I like to use in terms of either recovery with our relationships with others, or recovery with ourselves, or even addictive thinking or addictive behaviors, whatever it is, it's not really a stair step progression. It's a cycle, and it just revolves. And what you can hope, I think the best thing any of us could hope, is that we're going to go back through all of these steps again and again. We're going to have to relearn and rehear the same things again and again, which is why we could hear the same message from 30 different people, and it's going to matter and be more meaningful 30 different times. It's like you're never done. But what you can hope is that maybe the spiral gets a little tighter, like the depths that it knocks you down, or the highs and the anxiousness that it gets you to, or the level that you get worked up, or how quickly it takes you to recover. Like the best outcome I think you can hope for is to become more aware, more clear, and act and honor what you know, and be able to communicate that with love better over and over and over again. But we're never done. We're never done. Just like we're never going to be done eating. It's just part of what it is to be alive. The same with relationships.
1,000%. And that tighter spiral, that's what we're always at. That's what we're after with food too, right? So with our health, it's, can I step off the wagon for a meal? Can I step off the wagon for a day? Can I be in my own feelings for a couple days versus, the 2 or 3 years I used to spend in them. So it's that. All right. So I want to move on to question two, because this I think is really important. And I would love to hear your answer on this, because when we think about relationships, tribe, having them all in, we get sometimes our tribe isn't the best, and we know that, but we have no idea how to remove it. So, question two for you is, how do you remove yourself from toxic people in your life?
Mm, that's another great question. How do you remove yourself from toxic people in your life? I think the first step before we even get to a how, like before we even get to an action step, is you have to get really clear on if this is a toxic relationship.
Mm.
Because we often, and I think I see this a lot of times with women, we negotiate our uncomfortable feelings because we don't want to be disruptors, we don't want to make waves, and we don't want to upset or disappoint. And so the knowingness of, is this relationship serving me or not, is not really one you're going to logically cognitively think through. That's when I like to take some deep breaths, get out of your head, into your heart, and into your body. And that may sound a little woo, but your body is always, like, your body is constantly responding and reacting to every thought you have, every emotion you have, every interaction you have. When you don't feel safe, your body knows. Now you can tell yourself, the biggest lie we tell, and the lie we tell most often, is I'm fine. But your body, like, that's why I stress sweat so much, because I'm trying so hard to tell myself how fine I am, while my body is like, we are in danger, there's a problem here. Now granted, it's important to also acknowledge too that just because my body's having a stress response does not inherently mean I'm interacting with someone unsafe. But I think before we get to the how, like how do you remove toxic relationships, I think first is really taking stock and inventory of how you feel when you interact, when you leave an interaction with someone, when you're anticipating meeting someone. What's going on in your body? What's going on in your heart? What are you thinking about? And also, how much space is this taking up? Like, are you spending a lot of time negotiating an interaction that you didn't like and trying to make it better? Or are you replaying an interaction and reimagining how you would have done it differently 15,000 times? Or are you anticipating an interaction and thinking to yourself, okay, this is exactly what I'm going to say, and this is what I hope they exactly say? Like, the level of managing and juggling you're actually bringing into relationships, the amount of work, and I'm using air quotes because I think we hear so often that relationships are work. The work is really done on our relationship with ourselves. And then hopefully we feel like we have to do less work with other people. But to really take emotional stock and inventory with how you feel. And then based on those feelings, if you can honor those feelings, like, oh crap, I don't know if I can curse on this.
Yes, you can. Have you
Oh,
met me?
oh shit. Okay, good.
Mhm.
So, oh shit, like I feel bad and anxious and stressed almost every single time I'm interacting around this person. And then with as much compassion and self-compassion and grace as you can possibly muster, what does that mean for me? What do I want that to mean for me? And then let that knowing be what leads you to, well, then I probably need to make an adjustment here, or I probably need to make a shift here, or I probably need to make myself less available to that person. But so the how and the how do I do it and what do I do, if that comes from like a deeper knowingness inside you, usually you'll know the next right step once you're really clear on what you're dealing with.
That's so beautifully put. And the thing I want to highlight from that is your body does always know, because your body's number one job is to keep you safe. So if it's going to
Yes.
tell you anything, it's going to tell you if you feel safe or not safe. And you've got to listen to it, because once it does feel safe, it has answers, and it will feel safe when you choose yourself over toxicity. And
Mhm.
the piece that I keep learning over and over and over again is I know. I always know. And I know by getting into my body and out of my head. But I think in today's world, we're like, I'll read more books, I'll take in more information. Like someone has a tool for me. And it's like, like your body knows. Like
Yes.
you know what to do. Listening to it is scary. Like it can be scary, but that doesn't mean you don't know what to do, which brings me to my third question, because I think it's perfectly set with the conversation we just had about removing toxic people, and particularly once you start to realize what you need to do.
Mhm.
So question 3 is, how do you set boundaries and keep them?
Ooh. So, really, that's an extension of the exact same thing I just said. So, most often we know a boundary needs to be set when a line has been crossed, unfortunately. Like, it's usually we get clear about our boundaries through experiencing some level of discomfort or pain. And so often it's like there are sort of two different tiers of boundaries. There's the toddler model of boundaries, which is like, and I think this is one that is certainly more cinematic. It's very Aaron Brockovich-y of like, I'm going to draw the line in the sand and I'm going to tell you how I feel and what I need, and I'm going to wag this finger, and if you cross this line, that's it, right? And that is also very similar to how we talk to toddlers, right? Like, if you touch that remote again, I'm going to take your cookie away. The thing is, there's a reason why toddlers throw fits when they are talked to that way. And the limbic system, right? This very primal part of our brain gets activated, and it stopped. Well, actually, so the limbic system stops developing at the age of around 2 to 3. So in a lot of ways, when we get activated or triggered, or that part of our mind takes hold, there's a reason why adults throw tantrums too. It's because we all kind of at some point go back to being children, because no one likes being talked to that way. No one likes being told what to do, even if what you're being told makes sense. Like, don't put your finger in the light socket. Um, don't lie to me. Don't flirt with someone in front of me. Don't, tell me you're going to take out the trash cans and then get mad at me when I ask you about them, right? Like, it doesn't matter how reasonable you think you are. The process of boundaries and boundary settings in adult relationships are really about holding yourself accountable to your own needs. So what that would really look like is not the toddler model, but more of, okay, I'm going to tell you how I feel, because that's all I can speak to. I can't speak to you. I can't make a value judgment about you. I can't tell you what an asshole you are, because that's easier than telling you how hurt I am by your actions. But what it would really look like is getting clear, getting aware, right? When you did this thing, this is how it impacted me, and I need you to know that it really hurt me. That you're not saying you're not, again, I'm not making value judgment, I'm not making critical statements about who you are as a human being. I'm simply letting you know this behavior led to this result within me, and this is how it made me feel, and I need you to know that that is how it made me feel. And then you're simply empowering the relationship and giving this other person the opportunity to decide and make a choice, knowing what you know now. Are you going to act differently based on this knowing, or are you going to continue to do the same thing knowing that it hurts me? And then this is where the real self accountability is that if and when they continue to do the same thing and show you the same behavior, knowing full well how it affects you and impacts you, because most of the time boundary lines are crossed initially out of either ignorance, lack of experience, or lack of awareness. I don't it's no one's Most people aren't going through life just swinging bats trying to thwop us in the face. But knowing what I need to be loved, or what I need to feel to be loved, what I need to feel safe, knowing how your behavior impacts me. If you continue to do the same thing, now the boundary and the accountability comes to, how am I going to show up for myself, knowing that you know how I feel and you're not doing anything about it. And so it's really a question of, I think boundaries really come down to, do I love myself enough to hold myself accountable to what I need to feel safe? And that doesn't always mean leaving or abandoning the relationship. That doesn't always mean that. I think that's often where things go. Like, we want to make it real black and white. But it's more like, okay, I can't continue to make time for you or space for you in my calendar, knowing what I know. Or I'm going to be less willing to show up and help you when you need me. Or I'm going to be less willing to offer my advice, knowing how hard it is to continue to show up for you and you not take it. Like, whatever the stakes are and whatever the relationship is, ultimately boundaries come back to you, always come back to you.
The thing I want to just put on there, because there's not really anything to add. I thought that was brilliant and so helpful and painted just such a beautiful picture of what needs to happen. But for anyone who likes the line in the sand or like the big to do, because I did, right? Like it, because it made it final. It made it like, oh, I did it. Yeah, hear me roar. But it's really like, it doesn't have, you don't have to tell everyone about it. You don't have to tell the person involved. You don't have to like write it in the sky with a plane. You don't need to put a post on social. It's, what does it look like to carry out my own boundaries? Is it having a conversation with a person? Is
Mhm.
it knowing in my own head what I'm going to do? Is
Mhm.
it, or is it something else? And I think we are so bombarded with these messages of how to stand up for ourselves, and it's all a lie, right? Like, it's what's best for you and what feels right, not necessarily what feels comfortable, what
Right.
feels right for you. And I just wanted to put that there because I have stuck many a stick in the sand, or
Mhm.
whatever it is, and screamed from my top of the lung about this boundary. But I'm realizing more and more I don't have to do that. I just have to keep acting in integrity with myself, whatever that means. And I don't have to explain myself to everybody else, but I do have to explain it to myself. Like, I have to explain and accept to myself.
Well, something I want to add to that I think is so good is that oftentimes the expression of treat others the way you want to be treated, I actually think that's a terrible expression, because people, what I know, knowing what I know, doing what I do every day, people are not nice to themselves. So I don't want other people treating me the way they treat themselves, because they are not good to themselves.
Mm.
I'm still trying to figure out my own stuff. And so I think boundaries is, in the best sense of the word, is I want to love myself the way I want to be loved. And
Mm.
that's really like treating myself the way I want to be treated and loved. And you're absolutely right. I don't think every boundary needs to necessarily be, one, a declaration, or two, maybe even a conversation. So often I'll cross my own boundaries or betray my own needs by saying yes when I really need to say no. I think that's a great example of like overfilling my calendar, overcommitting, and or what I would say, which probably sounds like sexier for marketing, over serving, but that's also martyry. But like just continuing to over show up at my own energetic expense, and potentially my own health expense. That's a line that the person who made the request of me did not cross a boundary. They simply had a request of me. I have crossed my boundary or betrayed myself or not honored myself if what I'm feeling is exhausted and run down and simply need to say no. Even if I'm not exhausted, I don't have to say no only when I'm exhausted. Maybe I just don't want to do it. But I think that's a really great clarifying point, Erica. And also to add that, like, there are times where it's really just about you and you. It has nothing to do with the other person. The other person was just a teacher or a mirror that helped reflect and reinforce that thing that I needed to be reminded of.
I, I think that's an absolutely great point, and I'm so glad you made that clear, because I hope what people are gathering from this is that a lot of things about relationships is just all about ourselves. And I think we've been taught to look to the external for all this validation, uh, but a lot of the stuff is just in here, which brings me to the fourth question I have. Because when you do start to do the internal work, when you do start to have that relationship with yourself, it can start to feel lonely because you're changing.
Mhm.
And some people, okay, most people don't want to come along on that journey with you.
Mhm.
It's not because they hate you. It's not, there's nothing along with it. It's just they're on a different path, they're on a different timeline. And
Mhm.
so a lot of people who go to change are ready for it. They tell me
Mhm.
they start to feel really lonely. And so I'm wondering, how do you build healthy, supportive relationships? Or probably more specifically, where do you find people to build those relationships with?
That is a biggie. So I have a couple different thoughts to that. The first is, and I hope you can help remind me that I said I had a couple, because I don't want to get lost in a tangent and forget, because I think they both are important in different ways. So one is trust, and one is where's your attention. So if I am trying to move forward and make change, and what I'm wanting to do, which is so often found in like people who are of service or educators or coaches, right? It can, our desire to serve and be of service can dip into rescuing. And so, which can also dip into codependence, which can also dip into enmeshment. Like, I can't be okay unless you're okay too. I can't move forward unless you move with me. And so, if I'm trying to move forward and make a shift and change that I know ultimately is right for me, and I want to like kind of like latch on to these people to my left and right and try to pull them like, come on, come, where my focus and energy and attention is where's behind me. Like, I'm looking in the rear view mirror. And if you were to think of, sort of the, I don't know, the alliteration or like the imagery of looking in a rear view mirror while you're on a road trip, you're only going to see what you're leaving behind. But if you're not looking out in front of you, you're going to miss the view, you're going to miss the landscapes, you're going to miss everything ahead of you by constantly looking behind you and then trying to drag everything with you. And by everything we mean people. um, and so I think that that's a hard thing to let go. And what I would encourage from at least the mental health perspective of either enmeshment or codependence or attachment to these relationships is, if we were to use that attachment or that fear of surrender and letting go, if you were to use that like a mirror or even like a reflective tool in a journal, what am I really holding on to? And most often, what we find is we're holding on to what's familiar and known, because we are almost more uncomfortable with a known familiar level of discomfort or dissatisfaction than the uncertainty and the risk and the vulnerability of stepping into something brand new. And that's, again, going back to trusting, like, oh, this is my body, my brain's hardwired programming that routine and structure and familiarity means safety. And so it really comes down to, I think, exploring within yourself what's the difference between being in a rut and being truly at ease and comfortable, or being sort of satisfied with being unsatisfied because of family history, generational things, childhood development. Like, what's known and familiar, and what's truly in my best interest. And that's not something I can decide for you. No therapist can tell you, a friend couldn't tell you. That's something only you know. And then the other is trust. And so with that, I think sometimes, as much as we focus on this, as much as I love focusing on the relationship with ourselves, part of the reason why I was inspired and felt so strongly about creating my own podcast was that I needed to hear 1,000 different times in 100 different ways, you are not alone. You are not alone. You are not alone. You are not alone. Now, sometimes sometimes I need to get like a little tough with myself. You are not alone can also mean, when I need a swift kick in the pants, you are not special. You are not special. You are not unique in your pain. You are not unique in your insecurity. You are not unique in this journey. It's not just happening to you. And so sometimes reminding myself of that, like I remember driver Zed being so petrified that I wouldn't pass my test. I'm like, you know how many people are on the road right now who got their damn license? Like, I will be fine. And sometimes it just kind of depends on the voice you need. And sometimes you need that soft, tender, loving, sweet person, then sometimes it's okay. Like in terms of like trusting yourself, you are not the only one interested in self-development. You are not the only one who's interested in living your best life and being your best self. So if I can shift my focus from what's behind me to what's ahead of me, there's probably people next to me, next to me, next to me, 50 feet ahead of me, like 100 feet down the road that I probably want to meet that I'm not ready to meet yet because I'm not even evolved enough yet. Like, I, there's 7.5 billion people on this planet, and I'm bringing another one. I'm adding, I'm adding to the overpopulated soup. Like, I'm going to find someone. There's going to be someone who's interested in the things I am. And also, too, I need evidence of that. So I try to create community as much as possible. That's why I've got a private Facebook group called the Treasured Tribe. That's why I created a podcast. That's why I'm always hungry looking for more interesting people. That's how I connected with you. I'm like, I like what she's doing. I want to talk to her more. I mean, sometimes just follow your curiosity too, and you'll find really amazing people just by following your curiosity.
And I love that you laid out a few things that it feels so obvious, but we forget that it's
Mhm.
available to us. So Facebook, it can be terrible, but it can be great. Remember when social media was there for us to connect? Like there are groups, there are people. It will involve you stepping out into the unknown. It will involve you being a little uncomfortable, but there are people just like you looking for you. And recognizing you're not alone, recognizing you aren't special, or recognizing that
Well, your pain isn't special.
your
Let me
pain
just
isn't
say
special.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah, because I don't want to get too tough love because that's people are special. I do believe that, but your pain is not special. It's
right.
like the voice of everyone's insecurity and pain and fear sounds exactly the same. What if no one likes me? What if no one accepts me? What if I'm not good enough? What if this never works? Like you realize once you hear the pain, the voice of pain enough, you're like, it's always the same. Always the same.
Like amen. And every single time you step up, new level, it comes back. It's just in a different outfit, and and that's why it's so important to find these people who can remind you of it, because they're we're all on different walks of life, and some people don't know that. And if you're listening to this conversation, you probably do know that. And so looking for people who can keep having that conversation, because I've been in conversations with people who are like, there's just no one around. There's just no, and it's like, there's no one around because you're not looking. It's not because there's no one around. And that's a little tough love, but it is,
Mhm.
change is uncomfortable. Like it just is. And you got to step into it, because the alternative is what you know, and you don't like what you know.
And a good shift, if you were my client and you were saying that to me in a session, you were saying, well, there's just no one around. Or like whenever people say like dating apps suck because there's no one to date. Like I'm in Indy, and so that's what I hear. Like there's just no one good to date in Indy. I'm like, have you met every single person? Like, so if you could shift the narrative that you're telling yourself to justify your discomfort, because if we justify our way or discomfort, we're not facing our discomfort. And so if you can take those sort of narrative stories, constructs, and simply state your emotion, I feel lonely, or I feel uncomfortable, or I feel unscared, not there's no one to date and that's why I'm alone. If you kind of eliminate that why for yourself and you just get really clear on how you're feeling and own and state that as true, that will actually lead you to an action step more quickly, because what you're doing is you don't need to justify why you want to sit on the couch. You can say, I'm lonely and I don't want to do anything about it today, or I'm lonely and I don't know what to do about it. But actually a process I like to introduce. You can consider this a journal exercise if you want, but I feel, I want, I will. So I feel lonely, I want connection, companionship, camaraderie, whatever. I will reach out to one person in my phone, right? Like out of all the contacts, I'll reach out to one person today just to say hi. Like
Mm.
it doesn't matter what the will is or what the action step is, but that's fun. That's going to inch you just a little bit closer to how you want to feel than trying to justify it away.
1,000%. And so with that, we've covered so much, but I have one last question for you. And it's, given everything we talked about, what is the one thing you hope people walk away from with this conversation?
Trust yourself. Trust yourself. Mm-hmm. That's really it.
I, I got nothing else to, like, if people did that,
Mm-hmm.
health would be solved,
Oh, I
relationships would be solved,
yeah.
so much would be, because I have found when people listen to their inner knowing and then take action,
Mhm.
the world does unfold for them, and
Mhm.
not perfectly,
Yeah.
but you're going to take like 6 steps forward, and
Mhm.
then you're going to have to be reminded to look at those 6 steps because you skyrocketed so fast. So before I let you go, if people want to get in touch with you, I know you mentioned a few things at the beginning, but can you give them ways to get in touch, see you, listen to you, hear you?
Yes. So, I mean, one real simple way would be to go to my website. The information for my course, information for my journal, information for my podcast is all kind of housed there. It's danielleireland.com. You can also find me on social media. I think my handle is at Danielle Ireland underscore LCSW. Again, that's real short. It's like real short and sexy, like Nike and Google. No, just go to my website and I think all the ways you'll want to get in touch with me. And also, if anyone is interested in participating and enjoying the relationship course, I'm actually going live every Saturday to help facilitate the course because it's all housed online, it's all virtual, but I'll be going live every Saturday between now and March 20th when I take my maternity leave to really help just kind of foster that learning and exploration. And so if anyone wants to join, you can still join.
Amazing. And I will make sure to put everything in the comments below so people can able to link up with you and all that good stuff. And with that, thank you everyone for tuning in. And just a quick reminder, if you haven't subscribed already or click that like button, go ahead and do that so you can be notified the next time we have these conversations. Danielle, thank you so much. Appreciate you being on here, and talk to you soon.